Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place where we really get into the weeds, take complex information apart, and hopefully find those hidden gems for you. Give you that aha moment.
Exactly. And today, we're diving into a company that, well, it definitely gets people talking. Palantir Technologies.
Intense curiosity, strong opinions, you name it.
For sure. So our mission today is really to cut through all that noise, all the chatter, and give you a clear, nuanced picture of Palantir. We've pulled from a whole stack of sources.
And this dive, I think, is going to uncover some surprising stuff.
Definitely. From how they started their AI, which is pretty cutting edge, all the way to, honestly, their impact on financial markets, which is kind of revolutionary in its own way.
Right. It's kind of wild how a company named after a seeing stone from Lord of the Rings ended up so central to, actual government intelligence and big corporate decisions.
Right. But at its heart, it's about taking huge amounts of messy data, disparate data, and turning it into something usable. Actionable intelligence.
Okay, so let's start there. How did this company with this, let's say, mythic name actually get going? Who was behind it?
Well, let's unpack that origin story. Palantir was officially set up back in May 2003.
2003, okay.
Yeah, and the co-founders are pretty well-known names. Peter Thiel, Stephen Cohen, Alex Karp, Joe Lonsdale.
Right, big names.
Yeah.
But I heard they actually had a tough time finding investors initially. Seems odd.
It does, but it's true. They struggled a bit at first. The really crucial early money came from two main places.
Okay.
First, $2 million from the CIA's own venture capital arm, which is called In-Q-Tel.
Right. In-Q-Tel, I've heard of them.
And second, a pretty hefty $30 million from Peter Thiel himself through his fund, Founders Fund.
Wow. Okay, so Thiel really backed his own idea.
He did. And then over the next, 3 years or so, they really buckled down and developed their core tech. They emphasized this idea of intelligence augmentation.
Intelligence augmentation. What does that mean exactly? Not just pure AI.
Not just AI replacing people, no. It was more about building tools for human analysts, empowering them to explore data, understand it better, basically using tech to make the humans smarter, not redundant.
Huh. That's a neat angle. A human-centric approach. And it seems like they grew incredibly fast after that. What were some of the big early wins?
Oh, absolutely. Things moved quickly. By 2010, they were already partnering with Thomson Reuters on this tool called QA Studio.
QA Studio, okay.
And then, kind of a big moment, Vice President Joe Biden actually gave him a shout-out. Credited their software for helping fight stimulus fraud.
Wow, a VP endorsement? That must have helped.
Big time. He even announced it would be rolled out to other agencies. That really, put them on the map. And by 2013, their software was already the glue linking up databases for agencies like the CIA, the FBI, databases that hadn't talked to each other before.
So breaking down silos, that's huge in government.
Exactly. And you see it in their valuation. I mean, think about this jump. $9 billion in 2013.
No.
To $15 billion in 2014, and then $20 billion by 2015.
Just 2 years later. That's incredible.
It really is. It wasn't just hype. It reflected that the market was starting to grasp the unique problem Palantir was solving, making sense of critical data at a scale few others could manage.
So after that kind of success as a private company, how did they end up going public?
Well, it was interesting. Alex Karp, the CEO, had initially said they weren't keen on a traditional IPO.
Right, I remember that.
But they eventually listed on the New York Stock Exchange, September 2020, ticker PLTR.
And they did a direct listing, right? Not a typical IPO.
Exactly. A direct public offering, or DPO. So existing shares get sold directly, less involvement from the big banks compared to a traditional IPO.
Okay.
And just recently, a couple more moves. They shifted their listing over to the NASDAQ in November 2024. And then a big one, they got added to the S&P 500 index in September 2024.
Ah, the S&P 500 inclusion. That usually gives a stock a boost.
It certainly did here. Their share price jumped something like 14% on that news.
Wow. Okay, so they're firmly established in the public markets now. Let's get into the actual products. What are these tools that give them these deep insights? What do they sell?
Right, the core offerings. You've basically got two main platforms, Gotham and Foundry. Palantir, Gotham, think defense and intelligence.
Gotham like Batman. Okay.
Pretty much. It's built for militaries, counterterrorism analysts, and it's very relevant right now. The Ukrainian military is using it extensively for battlefield intelligence.
Really? Okay, so it's proven in active conflict.
Very much so. It's serious national security tech.
And Foundry, that sounds different.
It is. Palantir Foundry is aimed at the commercial world and also civil government sectors. So you have clients like Merck, the big pharma company, Airbus, even Ferrari using it.
Ferrari. What's Ferrari doing with it?
Optimizing performance, supply chains, you name it. Data's everywhere. Foundry also played a really key role in the UK's NHS response to COVID-19.
Oh, right. Managing hospital resources, tracking the pandemic.
Exactly that. And it's also being used now for the UK's Homes for Ukraine program. So Foundry is all about integrating data across complex organizations, commercial or government, for better decisions.
Okay, so Gotham for defense, Foundry for commercial and civil government. But these must be incredibly complex systems. How do they keep them updated, secure, running smoothly everywhere they're deployed?
Ah, good question. That's where Palantir Apollo comes in.
Apollo.
Yep. Think of Apollo as the underlying engine, the continuous delivery system. It manages and deploys both Gotham and Foundry. It handles the updates, the security, the operations.
It's like the operating system for their operating systems.
That's a great way to put it. It lets them run these platforms anywhere, government cloud, private servers, even totally offline, air-gapped environments. It's key to how they scale.
Got it. That makes sense. Okay, scaling, new frontiers. What about AI? Everyone's talking about AI. What's Palantir's latest big play there?
Right. That would definitely be their artificial intelligence platform, AIP.
AIP, launched fairly recently.
Yeah, April 2023. And AIP is, well, it's potentially a game changer. It lets organizations integrate large language models, LLMs, the tech behind things like ChatGPT, but within their own private networks.
Ah, so keeping the data secure and private.
Crucially. And users can create these things called agents that interact with the organization's ontology.
Ontology, that sounds academic.
Yeah. It's basically a detailed digital map of the business, all its data, how things are connected, the rules, so the AI agents can understand and work with the business's specific context.
Okay, so AI tailored to the specific organization. But what about control? Letting AI run loose sounds risky, especially for their clients.
Absolutely. And CEO Alex Karp has been very vocal about this. He insists AIP requires human oversight, especially, in military uses. He's explicitly said the AI cannot be allowed to independently launch attacks or make targeting decisions without a human pulling the trigger.
Okay, so back to that intelligence augmentation idea. Humans are still in the loop.
That's the message. Amplifying human judgment, not replacing it.
Beyond these big platforms, they have some other interesting, maybe more specialized products too, right?
They do. Some really cool stuff. There's Titan.
Titan.
Yeah, it's a mobile ground station. Basically brings AI tools right out into the field for the U.S. Army.
AI on the move. Okay.
Then there's Meta Constellation. That's a satellite network designed to work with AI models. You could use it to, say, request updated imagery or information about a specific spot on Earth.
Wow, connecting space and AI.
And one more, SkyKit. Think of it as a portable intelligence toolbox designed for tough environments. Reports say the Ukrainian military is using SkyKit 2 for on-the-ground intel work.
Okay, so really powerful technology across the board, which I guess inevitably brings us to the controversies. This kind of capability must attract scrutiny.
It certainly does. It's a complex ethical landscape they navigate. There was an early one back in 2011, a settlement with a company called i2 Inc. over algorithm development. But maybe more prominently.
WikiLeaks.
Right, the 2010 WikiLeaks situation. Palantir was apparently asked by a law firm representing Bank of America to draft a plan for responding to potential WikiLeaks disclosures.
And some internal documents about that plan leaked, right? Suggesting some aggressive tactics.
They did. Tactics like potentially spreading disinformation about WikiLeaks supporters. When those docs came out, CEO Alex Karp issued a public apology specifically mentioning progressive groups and Glenn Greenwald. He put an employee involved on leave, although they were later reinstated. It definitely highlighted that tension between their work and public perception.
And then there was the Cambridge Analytica connection later on.
Yeah, in 2018, during a British Parliament inquiry, Christopher Wiley testified. He linked Palantir employees to Cambridge Analytica, suggesting they worked together using that harvested Facebook data.
How did Palantir respond to that?
Palantir's stance was that any involvement by their employee was in a personal capacity, not officially sanctioned work. But, it still raised questions and cast a bit of a shadow.
Okay, and probably the most ongoing controversy is their work with ICE, right? U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. That started back in 2014.
Correct. And it's been a major source of criticism from privacy advocates and human rights groups ever since. Reports have stated that Palantir's ICM software is considered mission-critical for ICE operations.
What's Palantir's position on that work?
Their consistent line is that they provide software tools to government agencies, and those agencies use the tools to carry out their lawful mandates. They argue, essentially, that someone will provide these tools, and their tech helps make operations more accountable.
But that clearly clashes with the critics' concerns.
Deeply. It's a very polarized debate. You also saw similar privacy concerns raised by some lawmakers around their involvement in the HHS Protect Now program during the COVID pandemic, which tracked health data.
And another big government contract, Project Maven, for the Pentagon. They took that over after Google backed out.
That's right. Google decided not to renew their Project Maven contract in 2019 after employee protests about using AI for military purposes, specifically analyzing drone footage. Palantir stepped in and took over the work.
So, again, highlighting their willingness to work in areas other tech giants might avoid.
Exactly. It underscores their position in the market. And just to reiterate for you listening, our goal here is to lay out the facts and the context as presented in our sources impartially. We're not endorsing any specific view on these complex issues.
Right. And these aren't just historical controversies either. There have been more recent protests, too, related to contracts with the British NHS and the Israel Defense Force, the IDF.
Yes, illustrating that the ethical debates around their work are very much ongoing and continue to evolve.
Okay. So after covering the tech, the history, the controversies, let's shift gears to the financials in the market. How is Palantir actually doing right now as a business? Does the market value this powerful, sometimes controversial tech?
Right, and this is where things get really interesting, especially if you're tracking market dynamics. Their recent financial performance has been, frankly, quite strong.
Okay.
For fiscal year 2024, they reported revenue of $2.87 billion. That's up a very significant 29% year over year.
29% growth. That's substantial.
It is. But maybe even more importantly, they achieved GAAP net income of $462 million for the year.
GAAP profitable. So actual standardized audited profit.
Exactly. Generally accepted accounting principles. After years of unprofitability, that marks a huge milestone. It suggests a real shift towards sustainable profitability. Plus, they have a very healthy balance sheet, about $5.2 billion in cash.
Wow. Okay. Solid fundamentals emerging.
Yeah.
So how has the stock market reacted to this shift? What about PLTR, the stock?
Well, the reaction has been dramatic. As of mid-June 2025, Palantir stock, PLTR, has actually hit an all-time high.
An all-time high. After all the ups and downs.
Yep. The gains are pretty astonishing. Year-to-date, up nearly 90%.
90% this year alone.
Over the past year, it's up somewhere in the range of 400 to 450%.
Whoa.
And if you look back over the last 3 years, it's over 1,500% gain.
1,500%.
Yeah.
That's incredible. A massive upward trajectory.
It really turns heads, speaks volumes about current investor confidence, driven by that growth and profitability story.
Okay, that kind of performance is wild, especially for a company like this. Which leads perfectly into our next point. How quantitative intelligence, this kind of data-driven approach, is maybe redefining alpha, that extra market return, particularly with a volatile stock like Palantir. We've got some fascinating data comparing trading strategies for PLTR itself.
Yes, this is where Palantir's own ethos of actionable intelligence kind of comes full circle, but applied to its own stock. We looked at this chart, PLTR performance with alpha intelligence. It compares a couple of different quantitative trading models.
Okay, what models are we looking at?
There's the algorithmic intelligence model. Think of it as based on very defined preset rules. Its return is labeled ROI. Then there's the machine learning quant intelligence model. This one learns and adapts from data. Its return is WUM ROI.
Okay, rules-based versus learning-based. How do they do?
Here's the fascinating part. From mid-July 2024 to early June 2025, both models achieved an identical cumulative return, 516.09%.
516%, identical returns from both.
Exactly. Now compare that to just buying the stock and holding it over the same period, the buy and hold strategy, or BHRI. That yielded 468.71%.
Okay, so both quant models significantly beat buy and hold. That difference is the alpha, right? The excess return.
Precisely. They didn't just ride the wave. They generated extra return on top of the stock's strong performance, generating alpha.
But why the identical performance between the algorithmic and the machine learning models? That seems unusual.
It is intriguing. It suggests a couple of possibilities for this specific period with PLTR. Either the machine learning model, with all its adaptive capabilities, essentially kept confirming the signals from the simpler algorithmic rules,
Okay.
or perhaps more likely, given the volatility, the ML model's built-in risk management layers did their job perfectly. They managed the bumps along the way without sacrificing upside during what was a very strong bull run for Palantir stock.
So the AI didn't get overly cautious. It still captured the gains.
It seems so. And if you look at the chart, the trade signals, those little buy triangles, they consistently line up with periods where the stock had strong upward momentum and high volume. It suggests the models were effectively timing entries to capture those rallies.
So what's the takeaway here for you, the listener, trying to understand market dynamics?
Well, it's a really tangible example of how these sophisticated quant and AI models can navigate even really choppy markets. They can potentially generate significant returns, demonstrably outperforming a simple buy and hold approach, even on a stock that was already doing very well.
It's like having that super smart co-pilot you mentioned earlier, constantly adjusting, optimizing the path, while buy and hold is just, flooring it and hoping for the best route.
That's a good analogy. These systems are actively hunting for, and in this case finding, that elusive alpha. It shows how data science is being applied to the market itself.
A real-world case study in quantitative edge.
Absolutely. So, just to wrap things up, we've really gone on a journey here. From Palantir's beginnings, its CIA funding, this idea of augmenting intelligence.
Right, through the evolution of Gotham, Foundry, Apollo, and now AIP.
Navigated the complexities of their partnerships, the controversies that inevitably arise with powerful tech.
And landed on their current financial picture, surprisingly strong growth and profitability, driving that incredible stock run.
And maybe the most compelling twist, seeing how that same data-driven, actionable intelligence philosophy they preach is mirrored in the quant strategies trading their own stock. Strategies that are actively redefining what generating alpha even means in today's markets.
Which leaves us with a final thought, perhaps.
As AI and these complex algorithms become more and more embedded, not just in how companies operate, but in how financial markets themselves function, how might your own understanding of value, of risk, of opportunity need to adapt?
Definitely something for you to mull on as you continue your own deep dives into the fascinating world around us.